pumpkin guy. And if you look, the plus about the craft pumpkin is that it can be done year-round. You don't have to wait for the fall. But the minus is that the inside is has a lot of space. It's very hollow. So if you're doing it with a real pumpkin, you might not need to do this. But with a craft pumpkin, I suggest filling up that space so that the foam comes out. Instead, I can show you. I had some little air fill things. I'm filling up the space so that the foam that's generated comes out instead of just filling up the inside of the pumpkin. So this is where we're going to put our... So now we don't have very much space left in the pumpkin. The foam should all come out the face. Alright, what I have here now is 1 cup of peroxide solution, 40 volume, that you can get from a beauty supply, plus 1 tablespoon, which is 3 teaspoons of some kind of soap that you know is nice and foamy. I will pour that's mixed together. I'm going to pour it into the pumpkin. Then to activate it, what I need is, I have about a teaspoon of yeast in here. It might work better with a teaspoon and a half, but inside these test tubes, it's very hard to mix the yeast if you have too much. And about a teaspoon of that in some warm water. I would say probably about 2 to 3 tablespoons of warm water. Just make sure I know where the top goes. Okay. We're going to try to activate. Can you see the face? Mm-hmm. Don't move it too much, sweetie. You want to just set it up on the tripod now so we can see it foam, or?
I'm good.
You're pretty still. Okay. Let's hope it works. No, it looks like it's working. The last good yeast from my previous test was used to do a foaming pumpkin for my son's class, and it worked, so that was good. But then I went and tried to do a foaming pumpkin with the same brand of yeast, and it failed again. So I'm going to see if any of the yeast I currently own is good enough to do a foaming pumpkin. So we're going to test these 4 kinds of yeast, see which one is the best, and perhaps do a foaming pumpkin for you. Those look okay. I think you want probably at least 4 cups of foam to be coming out of this test size. Whoa. This test is for the type of yeast, the active dry versus the rapid rise. Everything else has been kept constant. 1/3 cup of the 40 volume peroxide solution, same batch. 1/2 teaspoon yeast in 2 teaspoons of warm water. 1 teaspoon of soap has been added to the 1/3 cup of peroxide that's in the 2 water bottles. So active dry versus rapid rise. They are both foaming over pretty well. It looks like the rapid rise is a little more active this time. I had better luck with the active dry before, so I'm a little surprised. But it does look like there's more foaming in the rapid rise. This time I'm curious to see whether it makes a difference if the yeast is dissolved in very hot water, warm water, or cold water straight from the sink. Because sometimes it's hard to have the right temperature water with you. Again, we used 1/2 teaspoon. We used the Rapid Rise, the one that worked better in the last test. Here's kind of close to boiling hot water. Warm. And sink temperature. They all seem to be working fairly well. So this test is to see whether it's possible to overload with the amount of soap. Sometimes I just do a big squirt of soap. I want to see if I'm overloading and making the solution too thick to have a good foam. Also, I'm running out of my first bottle of peroxide, so we'll test whether the bottle of peroxide can make a difference. The first 2 bottles are the same, except the peroxide used is different. And then my second bottle of peroxide with bottles, samples 2, 3, and 4, I've varied the amount of soap, adding more and more soap to see if that changes the result. Okay, I have the same yeast, all in warm water this time. Still using 1/2 teaspoon of yeast and about 2 teaspoons of water. Okay, looks like the new peroxide is working just as well as the old. And it's looking like having more and more soap is not making too much of a problem. There is plenty of foam all over the place. Alright, with the last little bit of yeast I have, I'm going to test what happens if I use less yeast and water. So for these tests I've been using 1/2 teaspoon of yeast and 2 teaspoons of water. I'm going to try less. So here we go. More yeast in here and less yeast in here. There probably is a minimum amount of yeast you have to have. Hold the top on. Whoa! Foamy pumpkin guy! And if you let go of the top, his brains start to come out. Ah!
Looks like he has a hat.
It does. So it's a pretty exciting Halloween activity that you can do all year.
His hat is melting.
That's true.
Rest in peace, hat.
Oh, yeah. What, you teleported?
It's slowing down now. I think that's a good place to stop. He looks so happy now.